Welcome to Innovations and Breakthroughs with your host, Rich Goldstein, talking about the evolutionary, the revolutionary, the inspiration and the perspiration, and those aha moments that change everything. And now here's your host, Rich Goldstein.
Rich Goldstein here, host of the Innovations and Breakthroughs podcast, where I feature top leaders and the path they took to create change. Past guests include Kevin King, Rick Cesari, and Brandon Young. This episode is brought to you by my company, Goldstein Patent Law, where we help you to protect your ideas and products. We've advised and obtained patents for thousands of companies over the past 27 years. So if you're a company that has software, a product, or a design you want protected, go to goldsteinpatentlaw.com, where there are amazing free resources for learning about the patent process. And you could email my team at welcome@goldsteinpc.com to explore if it's a match to work together. You could also check out the book I wrote for the American Bar Association that explains in plain English how patents work. It's called the ABA Consumer Guide to Obtaining a Patent. I have with me here today Yoni Kozminski. Yoni has spent a decade in digital marketing and in creative advertising globally, including in places like Australia, Los Angeles, and Tel Aviv. In doing so, he developed digital strategies for the likes of Mercedes-Benz, MasterCard, Sony, Medtronic, and also many eight-figure e-commerce brands. In particular, in 2018, Yoni expanded an e-commerce Amazon business from 2 to 5 million in just 12 months, and then it was sold. And as this expansion success was based on his ability to create process improvement and a team of incredibly talented individuals, the next step was to create his current companies, Multiply Me and Escala. These new companies help other entrepreneurs to grow their teams and create efficient processes to scale their businesses. It's really my pleasure to welcome here today, Yoni Kozminski. Welcome, Yoni.
Rich, it's an absolute honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about background. So clearly of the Australia, Los Angeles, and Tel Aviv, you started out in Australia, right? And so
correct.
Just tell me a bit about your background, like kind of how you grew up and got educated and then out into the world doing digital marketing.
Yeah, so I actually, I studied and grew up in Australia, and I started studying architecture, of all things. They have a routine that they do the first day intake of architecture. They look left, look right, only one of you are going to make it through. And, you look at each other, all three of you, well, it's not going to be me. And I pretty quickly became another statistic. So about a year and a half in, I dropped out of architecture, ended up finding my way into marketing. And that was sort of the start of my career. So yeah, sort of digital native, so to speak, in terms of the evolution. I grew up in a time where I was working with Mercedes-Benz actually to work with the legal teams in figuring out whether or not you could actually be posting as a brand on Facebook. So launch them on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and Pinterest and all the platforms. That was sort of that era.
Interesting. And I'm curious, something maybe a question you haven't gotten before, but like, what is it about architecture that relates to what you're doing now? Like, there was something about it that kind of attracted you to initially consider studying that. There's something about it that also probably is part of what you do now. So what might that be?
So you're right. I've never been asked that question before, and and I'll go one step further. And I've never thought about an answer to a question like that. But if I had to think about that honestly, I mean, I'm someone who loves to create. I've always had sort of a key eye for design, and I also love interior design. I love that stuff. And so I would say that something probably to do with that creative process and the creation and that sort of fluidity of I mean, it's also very structured when you actually get into the thick of things around architecture. When you're talking about the composite material, like everything has to work in perfect harmony. You're building, in ways, sort of systems as well, but creatively. So maybe that's the connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like a real connection there, where there's a way in which you have to organize things. First of all, be creative, and then organize things in a way that they work together well, which is kind of like the stuff that you've been doing through your whole career, including now. And I mean, maybe like that wasn't the right expression of all of those skills and all of that kind of desire of how you like to arrange the world. But like it seems like the DNA of that is similar to the DNA of what you do now today. And so like, let's talk about that. Let's talk about kind of like organizing things, and like maybe let's focus on the intermediate step there of digital marketing. So kind of like how you took that kind of knack or that like kind of intuition and brought it into digital marketing.
Yeah. So again, I'm loving it because it's a series of questions that you're not asking the standard things, and that's what makes for a really interesting conversation. So, how did that bring into, my expansion into digital marketing? I'm not sure that I could attribute too much of the sort of the architecture and the creativity necessarily, but now that I'm sitting here saying it out loud, I think to myself, well, I particularly gravitated toward early days Facebook media buying. I probably spent in my career across campaigns with clients probably somewhere in the vicinity of $20 million. And I loved Facebook advertising because it's not just baseline PPC where you do your keyword research, you understand what you're looking to target, and it's highly technical and it's very analytical from a numbers basis. Whereas Facebook, it's a whole different equation. You have the creative presence. You have to think about really, well, what am I trying to do here? I'm trying to capture eye share, not just from other brands, but from other people that they're friends with and close to. I have to create something that is going to be exactly what they needed at that moment in time, and convert that or change that into what I'm trying to send as a brand message, and then convert them as an acquirer or a customer or, whatever your business DNA is. So yeah, I would say that there was probably aspects of that creativity. And I think maybe just throughout the journey, that ability and that desire and the combination of those experiences sort of push you to want to solve bigger solutions, create larger things. And that's probably how maybe, I don't know if I'd be the classical entrepreneur, but when I look at my journey, it was probably, I was nearly 30 when I started my first business. So, it was all part of the learning experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, and so like those lessons in particular then became part of what you did with scaling other businesses. Like you started to work on scaling other businesses and improving their processes. And so like you were working on an e-commerce business in particular that you had some great success with. So like, let's talk about that and what, what types of things you learned and that you did to help move that along.
Yeah. Well, I'll start off by saying what I thought I was walking into and what I was trying to create turned out to be an altogether different thing. And what I mean by that is when I was brought into this business, they were doing 2 million, annual revenue, and they were effectively 3 guys running around trying to do absolutely everything, right? And they'd sort of been stuck at this $2 million mark. And what I did was what was very natural to me after 10 years in agency land was, all right, well, we have all of these in my mind, very clearly defined skill sets. We need a graphic designer, maybe a creative director. We need specialized customer support personnel. We need to bring in an ops manager. We need project managers. We need copywriters. So I effectively built out infrastructure in the Philippines that would rival talent, I would argue, anywhere globally in terms of the output that we were experiencing. And so, the question is, and what we did there and what we set out to achieve for the businesses we work with is, I think a really simple way of breaking it down is, let's say you're an Amazon seller, you have 50 SKUs, and you'll typically have that the top 3 SKUs, maybe 5 are the best sellers, and the other 45 will be trailing somewhere typically significantly below for businesses at that size. And that's because there's no demand planning, resource allocation, specialized roles. People are sort of still trying to handle as much as they physically can. And they realize that I just end up working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. And I can never sort of get over that sense of working so deep inside of my business, there's no longer anything strategic. So I guess how that was achieved was growing up in 2 agencies. I was the 10th employee. We grew to 35. I was the 15th. We grew to 40. I sort of went through those different levels of no management, middle management, how to build out those structures and those teams the right way to support, e-commerce business. If you've got agency experience, you're pretty perfect to step into an Amazon business or an e-commerce business.
Yeah. So, you've, I guess, spotted a lot of ways in which they were operating inefficiently because it wasn't divided into into roles and clearly defined roles, and then people that are appropriate for those roles. You just had a bunch of people each trying to do whatever they could as much as they could, and so I guess one of the things is that's not scalable, right? I mean, you can't scale like, well, we're each working on as much as we can. So then something had to happen in order to then organize it, right, in the way that could be scaled.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, a baseline thing to consider is building out an actual org chart and a chain of command and accountabilities and responsibilities for each of the roles. Once everyone understands what is the start and end point of their accountability and responsibility, you stop having those experiences where things just continue to fall through the cracks and you can't quite muster everything that you'd like to, and things go amiss. I mean, it really, when you start, that's the baseline, and then you start to build in the actual, SOPs, training videos, documentation, how to perform these very much repeatable tasks by anyone, so that you no longer rely on a specific linchpin. And if they left my business, then all of a sudden, I'm totally screwed.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So I guess the same could be said about, about then how you staff people. Once you have the processes set up, then you want to begin to recruit people, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'd say you could even do it invertedly and look to hire the managers that will help actually build out the process as seasoned professionals. One of the approaches I like to take is, you always hire the manager first so that they can build out their team and be the, to steal Amazon's terminology, to be a separable single-threaded leader of that specific function.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Awesome. And so then now tell me about what you're doing now with regard to helping other businesses with this. So you've created these 2 companies. So just tell me a bit about them and what they do.
Yeah, so the 2 companies are separate but related. I would say if you look to put us under an umbrella, Multiply Me and Escala serve to enable business owners to work on their business, not in it. And so with Multiply Me, we're an end-to-end executive search and HR function into the Philippines, where we effectively hold your hand every step of the way when you go down that journey. So from helping build out the job description and giving you insights as to, well, what actually goes into a job description? Why am I creating this role? What's the value in it? And helping make those decisions, all the way through to educating you on interview techniques, on what's the best way to ask behavioral questions or example questions. We're looking to help make everyone better interviewers and, hiring managers themselves, so that when they do get to sometimes we'll go through 100 plus talent just to submit a top 3, for example, when one of our headhunters are actually dedicated to the role. Our objective is how do we take you along this journey so you hire someone that's actually going to stick around, not just because we presented them to you. So there's a lot of that. And then where we get to is we also handle the ongoing HR and performance management. So the objective for us really is, how do we help create that cohesive, working, ongoing relationship with a dispersed team? So that's the Multiply Me equation. And on the other side, we have Escala, which is a management consultancy focused on process improvement, really specialized in the e-commerce and Amazon niche. So we've worked with over 50 Amazon and e-commerce businesses doing between about 2 and 75 million in revenue. And what they actually have us do is we come in and we assess their current state. So we deploy 2 consultants before we even get into the doing of work. We get on a discovery call. We get to understand, well, what are the baseline problems that we're trying to solve for to help create efficiencies, and as we like to define it, build systems for your business. So the way we look at it is, how systemized is your business based on people, process, and technology? So we'll assess and we'll figure out what's happening in the business, and then we'll build process flows of the sub-processes, processes, and core process groups, and really understand what's happening and provide feedback and actually build out a future state of how do we create efficiencies, what's the right DNA of the team. We'll build out the SOPs, training videos, and documentation. We effectively help commit businesses to an actual physical operation and creating their business operating system.
So, like, what are some of the aspects of that, of like what you do that you think most entrepreneurs don't do in scaling their businesses and in optimizing their process? And granted, I mean, it's not like they will absolutely master it by doing A, B, and C, right? Like, there's a whole lot of kind of like skill and technique that goes into what you do. But I'm wondering, like, what are some things that would give them some quick wins, in that realm?
Yeah, quick wins. So I would say that most entrepreneurs are not heavily aligned with building process and systems. It's very much, and I fall under that category too. Honestly, I saw it as a weakness of mine and something that I wanted so badly that when I found the right team members to bring in, we built a company on the back of it to solve really that problem. Like, if you look at the larger equation, multiply me, we're effectively primed to be an incubator. For example, we can staff companies that need talent, and we can also build the operational infrastructure to enable it for scale. So when you put them together, we can really build companies. So some quick wins that you can get on the board is, I would say, like, the first and most important step for any entrepreneur going through this journey is awareness. You have to understand where you sit on the scale of how deep in your business you are, or whether you're actually working on it and you're doing the things that are going to have the most impact. So there is, I don't know if you'd call it a game. Maybe I'm just sick and I love this stuff, but I like to suggest to people that they actually break down what they do in a week and label them a 1 if it's a task that really doesn't need to involve them. For an Amazon seller, downloading the Seller Central report daily and putting it into a pivot table to understand movement. Like, that could be anyone in the business with a very basic input, and that would save you whatever, 15, 30 minutes, an hour, but that's an hour that you're not getting back. So I would say that would be a 1, whereas a 5 is we're going to launch a new product. These are the 3 options. These are the details around the manufacturer and the supply chain and logistics aspects of it. This is the freight forwarder, all the details. And that's going to have to be you. You're likely, if you're the owner and you're not working in a large corporation, you're probably going to have to make that decision unless you've hired intelligently, you brought on someone to handle that function. So I would say that if you go down that and you start to understand where you sit on that scale of how many things can be delegated, then you can start to actually build out, you can go the approach of just, getting rid of the lowest hanging fruit and freeing up 20%, 30% of your time.
Yeah, absolutely. So then, as you said, awareness is that first step, because it seems like what you need to do is figure out just how far off you are. I mean, and it could be really stunning to see just how much stuff that you do that doesn't need to be you. And then that's really, I guess, the impetus for growing a team, for having some other people on board to help. And I guess it's also the beginning of the roadmap of then how you begin to divide it. Correct?
Yeah, I would say also a great litmus test for where you sit is, if I ask the question to you, Rich, if you were to walk away from your operation today abruptly, you decided you wanted to go on holidays, how long could you be away on holidays for before someone needed you? And it was critical.
Yeah. So like if, it's very interesting though. I mean, I guess that if you could, the ideal answer is that it should be a long time, because then you have a business that's running well. Right.
Yeah. So to give you sort of the insights, like if it's anything less than a week, then you should probably start to consider like, okay, what are some of these processes that I can build in my business that'll maintain without me? So, maybe you won't, let's say you're in the sales seat and it's a very direct to consumer sales process. Like let's just say, take me, for example, if I'm not, having and making relationships and, I guess like we get a lot of referrals from the good work historically, but a big part of it is that. So if I walk away from that function, maybe we don't grow as quickly, but the business is going to run just fine. It'll run for, I don't know about perpetuity, but definitely for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month for sure.
Yeah. No, got it. It's interesting though. It could also point toward just being a bit of a micromanager, right? So like it could point to, if you could honestly assess how much time the business really could operate without you, then that's one thing. But I think a lot of times though, it's, part of what's going to lead a person to come to the conclusion about that question is whether they are micromanaging, which I guess is the flip side of just like not trusting, like they're not able to trust their team. It might be possible for that team to truly operate without them for 2 weeks, but that their sense is that they have to check in every single day, right? So part of it is awareness, right? So you said first step is awareness. I think that's another level of the awareness too, is like how you operate as a leader.
So there's a great book about this sort of subject. It's called Multipliers. It's by Liz Wiseman, and it's how the best leaders make those around them smarter. And it's a study on what she defines as multipliers, people that have multiplying qualities and can get the most out of their team members or their employees, and diminishes, people who really stifle the output. And so you can actually learn a lot of how do I have these diminishing traits, and can I be a better manager, not micromanager, and actually have them reach these stretch goals and really realize their potential.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay, cool. Now on the other side too, like on the multiply me side of things, right? So if you were talking to an entrepreneur that wanted to grow their business and grow their team, like they wanted to recruit people. So on the people side of things, like what do you think is like a quick win, or like a kind of like a golden nugget of what would help someone with beginning the recruitment process?
Yeah, geez, I wish we had 20 minutes for this answer. I would say to keep it really brief, I would say a few things. If you're an Amazon business right now, there is massive talent scarcity globally. So the prices that you were paying last year, particularly in the US, they've gone up significantly. They're going to be much higher. So you almost have to be cognizant of the fact that you might need to be selling the opportunity and the upside of the potential to your candidates. So just being aware of what that looks like. But I would say for really quick wins as well, it all ties in together. Preparation is absolutely key. So, when I like to step into an interview, I'll actually think through the questions that I'm going to ask and what the desired outcome looks like if it's good, and what a bad answer might look like. So when I'm actually asking the questions that I have that relate to the role, this isn't behavioral questions. I know what I'm trying to get out of it, and I can have that consistency around it. I would say another thing that you can read about in working backwards is Amazon's STAR method, how they approach behavioral questions and figuring out exactly what did the candidate do that actually impacted the business? What was your specific output? So it stands for situational. I'm losing it. Task, results, and accountability, maybe. So I didn't get it in the right order, but the point is, the point is, it's Amazon's, not mine, is that when you work through it, you can actually ask the question and set the tone of what the situation looks like. From there, you can understand the specific tasks that the individual performed while they were delivering. So you can figure out if someone is, as they define it, a builder, someone who's actually creating things, or a coordinator, someone who's moving things around. So you sort of use these techniques to dive deeper and truly understand who it is that you're interviewing, because let me tell you, the cost of a bad hire is, I mean, it is quantifiable, but it's extremely expensive. And I've just been through a few of these where you hire and you invest so much time into senior talent. And if you'd just been a little bit more critical or really thought through the impact of business, you might not have hired that person. You would have kept, like, a bad hire is worse than no hire, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'd say a lot of times that the signs are right there. You're just choosing to ignore them. I mean, I think I'm a big believer in how you do anything is how you do everything. And like, you could see the signs right there. And I've noticed over time, just for myself, that it's right in the correspondence with the person for the first time. It's right in the correspondence around even setting up the interview, all of the signs about how they operate. And I mean, it's not quantifying exactly, but you said the cost of a bad hire. I would say it's just astounding. The cost of a bad hire can be astounding.
Yeah, I mean, when you even think of the cost of a good hire, typically speaking, it takes you 6 months until you start to realize significant value, as a baseline. It might be 12 plus months. So, to have to go back to the drawing board, it's your time double, or you keep personnel's time potentially double. And it also sets you back in terms of their education into your business and how they can have true impact. So yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, this is really great, and I think there's a lot of really great insight for entrepreneurs in how to develop processes or process improvement, and also for staffing and recruitment, which are the two major directions of your two companies right now. And if people want to learn more about you or get in touch with you, how do they go about doing so?
Yeah, I'm pretty good on LinkedIn, Yoni Kozminski, or check out Multiply Me, spelled with MII for the me, or weareescala.com. You could also check out our Escala consulting page. That would be the best places.
Awesome. Well, Yoni, I really appreciate you taking the time, and I'm going to be seeing you at some upcoming events also. Looking forward to that. But just for now, I really appreciate you taking the time to share what you've learned here with my audience. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Innovations and Breakthroughs with your host, Rich Goldstein. Be sure to click subscribe, check us out on the web at innovationsandbreakthroughs.com, and we'll see you next time.